What is the Internet of Things? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, chances are you already have it in your pocket. It might be on your wrist. Recently popular are fitness bands with accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor our activities and heart rate. Now we have smartwatches which do all of that, play music, and they can answer messages. Smartphones and tablets have replaced maps, secretaries, alarm clocks, entertainment, and now they can control our homes, change the TV, the temperature, security, lights, all from your device. Our cars are even getting smarter with sensors to keep us safe. The Internet of Things is simply using technology to mimic the human experience and simplify life.
Welcome everyone, Charlotte IoT. I'm stoked to see so many butts in all these seats. And even better, there's a whole nother group in Lake Norman that are watching this meeting. We're streaming live to 2 locations, plus we're on the internet. So who knows how many millions of people are watching us tonight. But stoked that you guys all came. And Charlotte IoT, we've been growing like crazy. We've been having these meetings for 4 years. We're now over 1,500 people. And every month we just grow and grow and grow. And we have technical presentations with really fun technical content. We do lots of workshops, and we're all about learning. And this group's for everybody. We want the wizards, we want the novices, we want the students, we want the moms, the dads, the kids. This group's for everybody, and we want everyone to learn and to help others learn as we go. So this board here is freaking amazing. There's 10 people on the board. They do incredible things, and it's why this group has grown to be like totally awesome. I didn't even envision this group taking off the way it has, and it's because these people here just kick ass and do like awesome things for this group, and I want to thank, stand up guys if you're on the board. No, Joseph, yeah. You guys kick ass. Thank you for everything you do. And we also have social media. Glenn's our social media expert, and we're doing a prize tonight from Microsoft is giving away 2 things. We've got a water bottle, and this thing is like the lightest thing I've ever seen. It could be like flown into space or something. It's like amazingly light. And then we've got speakers. So at the end of the night, we're only going to reward people who say positive, good things about the group. And Glenn, if you could pick out who's like, maybe pick out the top 3 or so, maybe 5 top things, and we'll do a random number out of those. So we want awesome, good things said about the group. And I posted a picture of Indy on Facebook and Instagram. We're easy to find. If you could leave a comment and a like on those images we posted, that'd be great. You can also post and reference us on your own post. Any of that's good. Yeah, help us grow. You don't post on your own, just like ours, comment on ours. Help us grow, become better, and make everyone know like how amazingly incredible we are. And YouTube. So Joseph is amazing. You can hire him too. So he does this for people, and he has been streaming these for over a year, and he does like a kick-ass job, and he can do commercials. He can do like all kinds of amazing video things. I don't know if you want to say anything more, Joseph, about your video skills, but trust me, he's like awesome. We really appreciate you doing this, Joseph. Yeah. Something else, that's our YouTube channel, Charlotte IoT. So if you ever can't make a meeting, there it is. You can watch it live. And our other social media, Slack is an awesome resource. Mike has set up an integration, so if you're on Meetup and you enter in your email after the profile, then you get an invite to Slack. Slack's perfect if you have a question. There's lots of senior people who troll it and will help with questions, or you want to get feedback or bounce ideas off this group. It's awesome, so make sure you use that. And Twitter at Charlotte IoT, we always love it when you guys say great things about our group. And Glenn will also be monitoring Twitter for the best sayings, so you guys try to tweet nice things too. Our sponsors tonight. Oh, I've got a big announcement. I've got a whole slide on my announcement, but Pratt Miller / Logical Advantage. We're now part of the Pratt Miller family. Logical Advantages, I've got a whole slide I'll talk about in a second. And Snap AV is where we normally have our meetings. And Graham couldn't make it tonight. He has a conflict with one of his kids. But Snap is amazing, and I've got a slide about Snap. And the most I think the most interesting job on this slide is that link, and I should have put like the contents of the link and not the link. But take a picture of it if you're an embedded person and you're looking for work. It's like an incredible job. And Mike was looking at it earlier. Do you want to say, do you know anything that you saw when you looked at the link earlier, Mike?
It just made me, as an engineer, as an embedded systems engineer, as a person who's interested in open source and Linux, it just made me drool reading Graham's description of this job. So I wasn't, I'm not, because I'm a little bit envious of the job. I'm not recruiting for Graham, but
yeah.
It really looks like a great opportunity for a techie.
And Snap and Graham, I think Graham was just an awesome person. I think he'd be an awesome person to work for. And so I would definitely look into that job. He's also got these other two jobs, a server developer and a front-end developer. So if that fits you, then look into Snap AV. They rock, and they've been so supportive of our group. Here's another slide on Oversee, which is an IoT solution Snap has with millions of devices that they're monitoring. We have pizza. All right. Well, I'm going to keep on talking while he sets up the pizza. But it's finally here. It's only an hour late. Sorry about that. But I guess we're having hiccups on the new venue, but we'll be able to eat in just a little bit. So here's my big news. So after 15 years, we are finally part of the Pratt Miller family, and they been a client of ours for a decade. They've been an awesome client, and we helped them write software around racing 10 years ago, and now they're rewriting the next version of it. And they're also really interested in IoT, and it's like all the worlds are coming together. They do really cool things like autonomous vehicles. I mean, IoT to the next level. So I'm really stoked that we're going to learn and do bigger, better, more awesome things. So yeah, you guys want to follow us more, and we're doing great stuff. Pratt Miller. And we're also doing I4, so industrial IoT. And I'm going to do a technical talk, and I'll talk about one of our projects on Azure tonight that's part of I4. But I'm like stoked after 15 years. We're now part of Pratt Miller, and it's just stoked to be able to tell you guys that. And yeah, Logical Advantage has been sponsoring the group for the dinners and things like that this whole time, and Pratt Miller is just going to pick up where we left off. Through the years, we've done lots of cool projects, but I'm not going to talk about them. Here's one we did for a city. We're tracking millions upon millions of carts. It's now in like 130 cities, but the big cities have over 1 million carts that are being tracked. We are also hiring. If you're a DevOps person, then come talk to me after this talk. And I mentioned earlier, but Christopher Lepre is in Lake Norman, and thanks to Joseph and Christopher, we're making this meeting happen in 2 locations because we're outgrowing every venue because we're being more and more awesome in every meeting. And in Lake Norman, I think they've got around 20 or so people, and they're listening to the same content, and we're going to try to incorporate them more so they can give us feedback and things like that as we continue. But it's really awesome that Christopher's set up this group. And now if you live on the north side of town, you don't have to travel all the way to see this goodness. We're doing lunch and learns, and we do at least once a month, and we're doing this in conjunction with the Riot Group. And the Riot Group is the regional Internet of Things, and they're bringing IoT to the region, and they're promoting growth. They have an accelerator program. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to have a product, they're an awesome resource. Talk to them because they'll help you take that product. They'll mentor you. They'll do. They know everybody. They're extremely well networked. But the lunch and learns are through the Riot Group, and presenters are flying into Raleigh and then traveling into Charlotte. So we have like a 1-2 hit for all these lunch and learns. And our next one is on HMI. And who here knows? I know you know what HMI is, Gary, because you're in manufacturing. If you're a controls engineer in manufacturing, you all know what HMI is. It's a human-machine interface. It's the display or the interface to the machine. And it's about user experiences, but also you need to make an HMI that you can manufacture, and it's about that. So this lunch and learn is going to be a really good one, especially if you're into making displays, making devices that need human interfaces. Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, so I'm going to miss this one. But if I were in town, you can bet I would never miss it. It's at Advent Co-working as well. And Jeremy, where's Jeremy? Yeah. Can you come up and tell us about how awesome the Civic Hackathons are? And while he's walking down, I'll just plug Jeremy a little bit, because Jeremy has been this incredible board member of this group, and he spearheaded the civic hacking, and we're doing things that are helping to make other people's lives better, and it's thanks to Jeremy and all of his efforts.
So one of the great things about the civic hackathons is that we get to take what we learn here, and we get to go out into the community and we get to implement. So we can take everything that we learn here and put it in real world terms, and then we get to help people. And that's really what it's all about. We are looking for the next round of people to help right now. So if you know people who are within 2 hours of Charlotte and are within, have a steady internet connection, so cable or DSL or whatever, we're willing to put in the Alexa devices, and we do a lot of automation. We can roll our own devices. That's pretty cool stuff. And we do it all at no cost. So really a really cool project. So if you know of anybody who's in need, let us know. We've automated, I don't know how many TVs we've automated. Yeah. TVs tend to be a big thing, right? So, and I get it, right? And now with Amazon's got a little box out that actually does it fairly inexpensively. Helping people understand this technology, set it up. We just helped a lady with being able to communicate. She's in bed, and she now can communicate to her husband, who could be in the sunroom or could be upstairs. But now she has a way to communicate using, the intercom feature of Alexa. And just these little things that we can give them, where she can call her sister in Florida without having to get anybody else, right? She can just do it herself. Those are simple, amazing things that we can give people. So if you know of somebody who's in need, let us know. We'll be doing a hackathon here in a couple months again, and I'm not sure what we're going to do it on, but we'll find something. And yeah, so it's really, really awesome.
Yeah, one of the really cool projects, we partner with the Makerspace, and there's a person who's a quadriplegic, and we added Alexa controls to a blanket that pumps hot and cold water into the blanket. So like he would sweat at night or be cold, and he had to yell at his wife to wake her up to adjust something. Now I can yell at the blanket. So like amazing things, and this stuff is easy to do. And so these hackathons make a big difference, and not only can you learn, but you can build and be epic. And it's all thanks to this hard work that Jeremy and the rest of the team is doing. It's just incredible.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, keep up, man. So we've got kick-ass lineup of stuff for 2019. And these are some of the things that are going to happen. Brandon, he's with Particle. He's an evangelist with Particle. Particle is like my favorite IoT platform. They have a mesh. Here's what the particle mesh looks like. There's the boron, the xenon, and the argon. You can do a thread network with nodes on it that it can route messages, and then you can have a cellular gateway, or you can have a Wi-Fi gateway. This infrastructure is really great. You can make products really quick, and one of the products I'm going to talk about when I do the technical part of the talk is a case study that's using some of their stuff along with Azure to store the data and to do the analytics in Azure. There's nothing easier than Particle, though, if you're a maker or if you're a cool person or if you want to do something in the enterprise. It's incredible. So that's Oliver. He's going to fly in from Austin, and then I always pronounce his name wrong. Pronounce it for me again?
Olivier.
Olivier from Microsoft. He was scheduled to come for this meeting. And can you sign it because you can figure out the tip and everything? Okay. I don't care. That's cool. Yeah. Thanks. Olivier, keep in mind when you sign the tip that he was an hour late. No, he is the rock star from Channel 9. And if you've ever seen Channel 9, it's like awesome content that they video stream. And he's just done 100 episodes. So he's like the face of Microsoft on Channel 9 for IoT. And he's going to hopefully come to Charlotte. He had to cancel this last time, but he'll do epic stuff when he can come. And David Simmons, he's up in Raleigh. He's spoken in a lightning talk before, but he did awesome, and everyone loved his talk, and it was on InfluxDB. And a lot of people in this group have used his stuff to do really cool things, and so that's going to be a really great talk. KX, they're going to come out of London and do a talk, and then Charles Lord. Is Charles here? He comes from Asheville, but he's going to do a workshop on the ESP32, and I'm not sure if it's going to be on Lua or what the language will be, but all of his stuff is always awesome. So that's some of the things we got lined up for next year. And now the main event for tonight. We're going to trim it down to 2 speakers, and we're going to push Rob's to another meeting. Rob's having some connectivity issues, and he's got like the most badass demo I've ever seen. It's just not working right now. So we're going to save it for another meeting, and we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. Indy and I can talk forever anyways, so we'll just do the meeting like that. And now I'm going to start the technical side of my talk, and a little bit about me, co-founder of Logical Advantage. Oh yeah, forget that. Let's get the pizza. Yeah, you guys let's all get pizza and come back and we'll kick off the technical section in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. We get more and more intensively listening and staring at you.
Yeah, as they want to. Pass out.
Christmas shopping done? Not quite yet.
Yeah.
We're in the market for a house.
Every time you walk to the front, the white background zooms you out into the shadow.
Yeah, I try not to. It's so hard.
Yeah, I know. Because I know you've got to go over mess with them. When you show the box, remember to face this way and not look back.
I think I bought that thing like 2 years ago, but they're still standing behind the parts. Oh, really? Like I just had one of the snorkel and the outlet that feeds into the sheets. Right? Pretty sure developed this bicycle helmet light.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's an hour late.
Medical devices is where everything's at.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I worked on this project a couple of years ago. This guy was, I don't even think anyone actually bought it. It was, I think Panasonic wanted it. It was a fully wireless blood oxygen sensor monitor that was like able to go into MRI. Too much metal. You can't monitor blood oxygen. The guy was a big Apple fan and named it iOS. Another cool project worked last year was a personal air purifier. And they had a whole big software arm separate to that. I think it's called Air Bubbles or something like that. All the station set up that will be monitoring the air quality, and you will be notified if your air was getting worse or getting better in the area. And they actually sold those units separate. If you just wanted to monitor the air quality, I don't know why you want to monitor the air quality without doing something about it. Pretty neat thing. I worked on a couple of accessories, mounting a baby stroller. We have a group of local officers around your desk. Cloud of purified air.
The odd thing is sometimes, like I had a neighbor who did a startup for, basically they were getting landlords they're getting people to pre-qualify for rentals. And even to the point of putting a deposit down. And then landlords could go when their apartments were up. Landlords could go and call through people who wanted an apartment in the area. And since they'd already put down a deposit, they were high intent customers. Did a ton of business in New York, but it didn't scale anywhere else. And so they were struggling because they couldn't scale it anywhere else. It just didn't work, you know.
Definitely working in Silicon Valley.
Probably, yeah.
When I landed there, just before the internet bubble, it was a full-time job to find a place. I mean, I literally spent 40 hours a week on top of 40 hours a week working trying to find a place. On top of spending. Let me just start talking. At least it was $200-300.
All right, guys, we're going to start back, but feel free to continue to get pizza, and I'll just keep talking while you get the pizza. So a little bit about me. You can tweet me. I love that. Co-founder of Logical Advantage, 15 years. I went to NC State. I have electrical engineering and a computer engineering degree. I've got 2 kids. One goes to Carolina, one goes to App State. They both completely rock, both the schools, but the kids do too. And Microsoft Regional Director, which is kind of a funny title because I don't work for Microsoft, I don't have a region, and I don't direct anything, but it's awesome. And what the Regional Director is, it's kind of like an MVP, but there's far fewer of them. And they also have a business acumen. And we're in there are 150 of us totally globally, but spread across 50 or so countries. And so it's a really cool thing. I'm the one from the North Carolina area. I don't think there's another one in North Carolina. There's one in Georgia and several others in the US. But I'm going to go to a summit in Microsoft in March where we always had to sign an NDA, so I can't talk about it until they announce it publicly. But we get excited about like the new things that are coming out and also give feedback. So if there's things that you guys don't like, talk to me and I can bring that feedback to the leadership of Microsoft, and hopefully we can fix things and make it better. Yeah, fix Internet. Yeah, duh. Don't tell me Internet Explorer, though. Only tell me IoT things. So with this being Christmas, I thought I'd bring one of my Christmas things because every year I do a little bit for Halloween. I build something and started building things with members of the group. Mark Engel and I built something last year for Halloween. It's totally fun doing it as pairs and making things better. But here's an example of Christmas balls. There's a particle microcontroller in here. And since we're going to do a shorter meeting tonight, I'll go ahead and show a quick video on this, and then we're going to jump back in on the Microsoft tech. Ah, shit. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why I had to do. Yeah.
No, really.
Is it Edge or Internet Explorer? Which one do we have it on? Here we go.
Blast with the Internet of Things. If you look over here, you see a 20-foot Christmas tree that I built. I did this with two 10-feet cast iron pipes, and it's hammered in the ground. And there's 12 strands of lights wrapped around the poles, and all those strands are fed into a circuit that's controlled by the SparkCore microcontroller. The SparkCore, I'm really excited about this microcontroller. It's got a really small form factor, but the best part about it is you flash the program over the air. So what that means is the tree is on the network over Wi-Fi. So I can be anywhere with my laptop that I have an internet connection, and I can program the tree. I can change the pattern, make it do really whatever I want it to do. And that's really liberating that you can deploy code from anywhere. Let me take you over this way, and I'll show you what the circuit looks like. So if you look at the tree now, it's doing a fade pattern. And the tree has 12 channels, but there's only 8 pins on the SparkCore that are used for analog. So there's 8 pins that you can do pulse width modulation. If you look at it now, the whole tree is fading in and out. And it's fading in and out on all 12 channels. And so I wrote my own pulse width modulator in the software. And it's a little bit crude, but it's effective enough to do the effect well. Now, inside here, you can see these solid-state relays. And each of these, this is a bank of 8 solid-state relays and then a bank of 4. But the brains of everything is this little guy here. That's the SparkCore microcontroller. And each one of these solid-state relays is going to a pin in the microcontroller, and it's just turning it on and off into a whole bunch of patterns to look pretty. So I could look at this all day long because the patterns are mesmerizing. So one other thing that's really neat about this is it's modular. What I mean by that, there's one plug that goes into it that's controlling this whole circuit. So at the end of the Christmas season, I'll take the tree and put it in the garage, and then next year, when it's time to put it back in the ground, I'll put it in the ground and plug it in, and it's good to go. So having this thing smart and having all the logic as part of the unit is really, really neat, and what the Internet of Things is all about. I did a few other Internet of Things in the yard, and I'm going to go to the mobile app. And if you look at the snowman over here, I'm going to turn the snowman off. And over here, I can do things like the wreath, and the icicles, on the chimney over there, you can see Santa, and I can even make him go away, or Santa has to come back. So you can do all kinds of really neat effects. And with doing things on the network and making things smart, you can really start to do some cool things. And a lot of people are doing music, but they're not, everything in the yard is not smart. So you get all kinds of options you have when you can talk over Wi-Fi. So you can tell every smart thing in the yard that the song's about to start and what song's about to start, and then each device can run the right program for that song. And so I'm going to have a blast next year on kind of coordinating things in the yard to dance to the music. I'm Dan.
All right. So what's really interesting is I built that on the first generation of particle. They were called Spark back then, and now they're on their third generation. And the third generation kicks even more ass than the other two generations because it's mesh and is using open thread and the same technology that Google uses for Nest. And so everything in the yard can talk to each other. It all will have an IP address, and we'll have one gateway for Wi-Fi. And these balls have an issue today being on Wi-Fi because they're at the edge of the yard and Wi-Fi doesn't really stretch that far. And so being part of the mesh, it's going to route the messages to it so I can coordinate things better. Instead, I just had to take them off the network and do things based on timers where all the timers are synchronized so that it looks like they're talking to each other, but they're really not doing anything great. So I'm really stoked that mesh technology is now available, and third generation is just like awesome. Can't wait. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about Azure Sphere, which is awesome. It just came out. It was announced at Build. When's Build? April or May, something they were in that time frame. It's in a big conference in Seattle, and so this is like bleeding edge stuff. You can finally get some Azure Sphere. It's available now, and let me go ahead and tell you like what's awesome about it. So Microsoft and everyone sees the value of connecting things. Everyone has a refrigerator, and everyone in this room wants it to be connected. You don't want to find out that the air compressor is bad by like spoiled food, melted ice cream. You want to get an alert saying, hey, we predict that your compressor is going to fail. It's time to send a technician to fix it. So now all of a sudden we got all these new business models where people can add new value, and that's what Azure Sphere is all about to support that type of thing. The other thing, and more close to home with Pratt Miller, is we do like awesome projects for DARPA and Department of Defense. Security is important. We don't want someone to get our data. People can die. We don't like death, well, obviously. So it's like, does your data need to be secure? Option 1, die. Option 2, like complete the mission. So it's really important for us, especially with all these Department of Defense type projects. And you guys probably all remember October 2 years ago. The internet was shut down on the East Coast, and it was because hackers were able to get control of people's cameras. They were mostly IoT devices, but it was because everyone used the same password. It was root, hard password to guess. And so they captured 100,000 of these devices, and they hit a DNS server, and that DNS server took out the internet for the whole eastern part of the US for a day. Well, this made all the C-level people wake up, like, wow, security is important. We can like screw everybody, not just our customers, but everybody. And sorry about the PG rating, it's not going to be good tonight. So anyways, the Azure Sphere has this level of security that you know you're not going to screw the world. And it's going to make your reputation be better. And C-level people understand that now, and it's like a big realization for everybody. So highly secure devices have these 7 properties. And they're properties because you can measure them. And a lot of other companies have some of these. I don't think they have all of these. We've done some really good talks on, Microchip has really great solutions with the silicone. And this is Azure's solution, but it covers these 7 things. And one thing that's kind of fun is many years back I made a fireplace. I think it was the first connected fireplace. At least I can't find anything else on the internet that says they beat me to it. And I made it open source, but the only thing between a fireplace and a bomb when there's IoT is software. And that can be true. You can have a stove or something like that. The only difference could be a difference in software. And that's where Azure Sphere really shines. Luckily, when I did my fireplace, I thought about the hardware. And basically, I made a pilot light that was always on and a valve, so it was either full blast, makes a fire, or off, doesn't. What I thought was really cool is, who shops at SparkFun? Probably a lot of people, a lot of makers. SparkFun makes everything. Well, that's where I got the motor controller for the fireplace. It's like SparkFun, fire, fun, good. And yeah, SparkFun's a great company, but there's lots of other really good ones. While I was making the fireplace, the cat starts creaking towards the fireplace. And I made a lot of user interfaces, one from the phone, one from speech commands. But I was programming one with a Kinect that used a gesture system. You do the right gesture and the fireplace turns on. As a cat creeps into the fireplace, I'm like frozen because I don't want to burn the cat. And that really made me start thinking, security and fire is important. And it's like important with all solutions. And so yeah, we actually ended up putting a mesh so we didn't like have fried kitty, because my wife would be, that's the end of all of my IoT fun forever. Yeah. But these 7 principles can help you also. But it's also really important to think about the hardware and make things so that if a hacker gets to it, you're not going to hurt somebody, you're not going to fry the cat, you're not going to blow up. So those are all really important things to think about. And I'm going to go into detail. There's also really good white paper online. You can look up these 7 principles. I'm going into detail on a few of these. All right. So what's important? So one property that's super important is the root of trust. We need to know, who are you? We need to know you're not spoofed. You're not someone you're not supposed to be. And we need to know we do a reboot the right software on the device. Integrity is these 3 things are the hardware root of trust that we need to know. Dynamic compartments. So anytime you can segment anything, it helps for security. If you hack one segment, you can't get to another segment. Azure Sphere does a really good job of both hardware and software segmentation, or what they're calling compartments. On the software side, it can be one process talking to another process. If you hack one process, you're not going to necessarily get connectivity. And if you attack the connectivity, you're not going to be able to get to the kernel, that type of thing. And so the segmentation is super important. And that's what dynamic compartments are. You can create compartments in software as well. Whoops. OK. And then what's this one? Renewable security. All right, so this is what over-the-air updates are. And I first realized the value of over-the-air updates with the Christmas tree that we saw the video on. When I first programmed that, it was like raining and miserable and cold outside. I'm inside the house coding it by the fireplace, enjoying life, and then sending the bits to it. Also, we've got clients, they're far away. Like this one, the client's 2 hours away. We don't have to travel to give them new features. We had an issue once where we lost a shift of data because it couldn't connect to Azure, and we just didn't get data for that shift. So the fix for it was, can't connect to Azure, we'll do a reboot. And then reboot, just like Windows and everything, it fixes everything. And, but we ought to push that without traveling there. Also, they've got 3,000 devices. Can you imagine, or 3,000 spindles that's monitoring. Can you imagine if you had to update all of those? It would take you forever. And so being able to push updates is the way to go. And now Azure Sphere is awesome on this because you can fix not only bugs and features in software, But the operating system, if a hacker figures out a vulnerability, then Microsoft is watching and taking care of us, and they can push updates that protect against those vulnerabilities. Yeah?
Can we do like a rolling update, or like a test update on like 5% of the machines to make sure they're running before we roll out to the rest of the platform?
I hope so. I don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I would expect, but I know with like Particle you can set up groups and you can deploy to a group. I think it's probably the same way with this, but I really don't know. Okay. One other thing is hackers, one thing they like to do is to trick the device and force it to roll back. Azure Sphere tries to detect tampering, tries to detect that so it doesn't allow that. So that's really important to keep you from being able to roll back. So here's the value of Azure Sphere. It's threefold. And security, and really I would say it's threefold: security, security, security. But on the Microsoft slide, it's security, productivity. And who here programs in Visual Studio? And so about half the room. You guys like debugging. You like locals and watch windows and looking at memory. All of that rich functionality you get from Visual Studio, you get in this. It's like awesome. And so that's the productivity component. Opportunity, I almost view that as a marketing slant, because in order to do the security, you need to have a kick-ass MCU. So since you have a kick-ass MCU, you have opportunity to build really cool stuff. And but you pay a little bit more for it, but because of that, you get all the security that you need to make it secure. Those are the three values of Azure Sphere. There's three parts of this system. And the first part, and I'm going to go into detail on all of these, is the MCU. The second part is the operating system, and the third part is the security service. The next few slides are going to go over these three parts of the Azure Sphere awesomeness. Okay, so MCU. Earlier I was talking about segmentation. Well, the silicone is segmented. Everywhere where you see the blue is firewall. Oh yeah, he asked me not to stand in front of the screen. I can't control my walking. But anyway, so that's the firewall. Each component can't talk to another component unless the firewall allows it. So if you hack one of those, you're not going to be able to get to another one. And so the MCU is segmented that way. But if it's on Azure Sphere, it's going to have these three properties. It's going to be connected. The first version of Azure Sphere has Wi-Fi. I'm hoping in the later versions they'll have like LoRa, they'll have OpenThread, and other types of communication as well. But now we get Wi-Fi built into the MCU. It's secured, so it's built with Microsoft silicone. And Microsoft doesn't make the silicone, they make the standards and the specification for the silicone. Then there's partners that make it. And then third is crossover. So what that is there's two Cortex, ARM Cortex, where you've got for your like high-powered, quick systems, and then your low-powered, slower systems, and those are segmented as well. Yeah.
So is this device like other Microsoft and other initiatives where they did TPM and then the root of trust actually comes? So does their TPM allow for third-party software installed? Because
it does. When I get to a slide, there's one section. There's 4 layers to where you can where the software exists. There's one area that's made for the manufacturers and the cool people like us who want to load it with software. Yeah, good question, Mike.
The whole thing's open source, dude.
Yeah, it's all open source. So that's like amazing. It's like the new Microsoft kicking ass, doing things open, and getting like feedback from the rest of the world. If you want to make it better, do a pull request. Make it better. If they like your quality and it adds a new feature, it'll be brought into the product. So it's awesome. One thing I really love about this slide is it makes me feel proud of Charlotte IoT, because these are the partners who are making Azure Sphere, but 3 of them have come to our group to speak before. Let's see, we had Nordic, NXP, and ST. So our group is like drawing really good presenters, and these silicone manufacturers are examples. There's a lot more silicon manufacturers who've come to Charlotte IoT, and hopefully they will embrace Azure Sphere too, because it is open source, the license free, so it's great. So Mike was asking earlier about the root of trust and software. There's 4 layers of the software. And the first layer is the security monitor. This is the layer that's monitoring the rest of the silicon and software, my fault, to make sure that it's not tampered with, that you trust it, and that type of thing. The next, and I love this, it's the kernel, which is Linux. So who here knew it was Linux? A few people. Why Linux? You know, this is Microsoft. Why did they pick Linux?
Better than Windows?
Better than Windows, developer community. The right answer, those are good answers, but the right one is open source. Everything's open source. They want this to be open, and so they picked Linux. It's lightweight, it's open source, it's perfect for Azure Sphere. And I love the new Microsoft picking the best technology. They're picking Linux. It's a great way to go, and I'm stoked to see that Microsoft is embracing like Linux and other software, open source, to make their stuff even better. Next is the on-chip cloud services. What that is the communication layer, which is on Wi-Fi for the first version. So if you hack the communication layer, you aren't going to get access to the kernel. So if you hack one of these, you can't get to the other one. And then finally is the top area, and this is the area that you load code on. And there's the 2 containers, one for low power, one for high power. This is where the manufacturers and the software vendors and partners and cool people like us will load software up in those areas. Okay, and finally, the third leg of Azure Sphere is the security service that's just monitoring, detecting, and responding. So that's the third component of what makes Azure Sphere awesome. The price of it is really cool. So there's no subscription. It's a one-time price. You buy it when you buy the silicon. And I don't know how much the license is, but I do know it's less than $9 because you can, if you buy Azure Sphere in quantities, it's like $8.65 or something like that. And the silicon is real expensive, so the license is just a small cut of that. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And one thing you got to commend Microsoft for is they're committed to this product for at least 10 years. Because how many times have you seen Microsoft and others release a product and then quit on it? Well, you know that's not going to happen. They're committed to this. So if you sell this to your clients, it'll be around for at least 10 years. And you can do over-the-air updates and that type of support to update your code for the next decade. Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? So we kind of talked about this earlier, but the value, security, productivity, Visual Studio, and then the opportunity, you have a really good MCU now that can kick ass because you need a really good MCU that does the security. In fact, it's the same MCU that's in your cell phone, but they put it on a smaller footprint so it can be less expensive. The clock speed is also dropped way down, so the performance isn't really as good as like your cell phone. It's less than half. But you have this kick-ass MCU that you can add to your refrigerators and everything else to make smart. Yeah, Jeremy?
What languages can we program in for this?
I think it's C#, but I'm not actually 100% sure. The code, yeah.
I suspect since it's a Linux kernel that you could target the machine, and depending on the architecture of the machine, if you can get it compiled to it, you can run kernel code that you can program in any language.
With it being Microsoft and you can code it in Visual Studio, I'm guessing C#, but does anyone else know the answer to that?
You can actually
C?
C, C++, Node.js, any compiler that you can plug into, you can program. The only thing we have made it easier is since Visual Studio is our product, it's easy plug-in, but you can just have at it.
And is it any UWP program, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll give you some history. I worked with the product for a little bit.
No, sweet, thank you.
Does it follow the existing core architecture?
So this is what Azure Sphere looks like. It's big. You notice the footprint's big. Seed Studio's got a dev kit you guys can go buy today. It's expensive. It's $84.90. But if you buy it in quantity, it's $865. So you know, to play with it costs you a little bit, but you get other stuff with it. And I can't wait to get my hands on it to you know, start playing with it and building things that are really going to impress the company that just purchased us, because they are, you know, trying to do projects for the Department of Defense and things like that. And this is going to be the answer, providing the security model that we need.
Microsoft just made a big commitment to the Defense Department of collaboration.
HohoLens.
Well, right, more so committing to our defense, if you will. I forget, I didn't really read the release, but it was pretty substantial commitment by Microsoft.
They are committed to making the world safer with this product, so that falls in line. Secured from the silicon up, so I think it's awesome. It's like a new swim lane for Microsoft. They've never done silicon. I mean, earlier in the days, they had .NET Micro framework. Who here has worked with .NET Micro? Yeah, Mike, he's my hero. I love seeing you. Mike's done all these workshops, and he was one of my mentors way back in the day, and I've learned so much. He's just like one of the smart guys. You can tell with the wizard beard, but he does projects with MQTT and .NET Micro, and his architecture and everything has been like mind-opening. But I used to really be into .NET Micro also, and published tons of open source and had millions of views on that type of code. But then Microsoft kind of abandoned it and open sourced it. And then they started to build Lilium. And Lilium was the replacement to .NET Micro that like fixed some of the performance issues and things like that. But before it went live, that was open source. And I think that what they're thinking of is something better, and it's all evolved to Azure Sphere. It's got the same Visual Studio goodness that you can code in that I used to love .NET Micro. I was so productive. And having breakpoints and looking at variables and deploying code was so productive. And now we've got something even better with that same IDE and environment. It's incredible. So before we move on, any questions about Azure Sphere? Yes?
Where does that fit in? Like, is it the new edge device?
Where does the what?
Is it the new edge device, or where does it fit in the architecture of IoT?
I'm sorry, I'm still
Where
not.
does it fit in the architecture? Like, is it
Could it be a next edge device or something?
Oh, an edge device. Yeah, so you can have device-to-device communication where one device is like a broker, and then it's sending data up into Azure, or it could send it to another cloud. It doesn't have to connect into Azure.
Or can it connect directly to sensors?
Can it connect to sensors? So you connect to sensors through the GPIO on the device, with just like the pins on the device. If you have a remote sensor, then what you would do is you put them all on the same Wi-Fi network, and one device can talk to another device that's on the edge. If you want to do like, and Indy, you can probably talk more on this because I'm not sure exactly how much edge stuff you can do today. And
yeah, in the future you'll see even IoT edge running inside Azure Sphere.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's a lot of work.
So now I'm going to talk about a project that I've mentioned a lot during our meetings. This is Service Thread, and it's a project that we did that uses a particle microcontroller, and it uses Azure IoT Hub. And this is an early prototype. You can see we've got these boards here that are optical isolators, and those are feeding into a prototype shield for particle photon. And this is the gem here, the particle photon, that then takes the data, sends it to the particle cloud, which has an integration into Azure IoT Hub, where we can do the data analytics on it. And you can see this old machine here. This machine is from like World War II. And so you can bet this World War II vintage machine wasn't on the network. And so we were able to add it to the network dirt cheap. I mean, the particle photon's like $19 for the prototype one, and then the optical isolators, those boards are like $10 each. So the prototype is dirt cheap. But then we made a PCB board, and the PCB board uses the P1, which is the module version of the particle photon, and you get more inputs on it. So we have 24 inputs, and we put a whole, these right here are the optical isolators. And so now we can monitor 24 spindles with one of these. And we also designed it so that if you pull off one of these jumpers, there's a daughter board you can put up here, or you can wire into one of the pins if you want to give it other functionality. And so you can use the optical isolated functionality, or you can use the pin for anything else. Really sweet design that just is awesome. All right. Oh, wrong computer.
Is it a replacement for the PLCs on the left?
Yeah, so he asked if it's a replacement for the PLC. And no, we still use the PLC. The PLC is doing all the controls on the machine. And the PLC actually knows the data that we're getting. We're just talking to the same sensors on the machine. We're talking to it through the voltages. So on the machine, you have this terminal strip, and these are 24 volts. And there's a proximity sensor. You can see this here. As this turns, there's a dog, a piece of metal that hits the proximity sensor. The PLC reads that, where our optical isolator is reading the exact same voltage that the PLC is using. So there's a benefit to this. The benefit is we don't want to control the machine, because if you hack our device, you can hurt somebody. You can make bad quality. You can do bad things. But with this, it's like an add-on to this old brownfield machine that now this machine's connected. The machine knew its data, but no one else in the factory knew the data. The business couldn't do anything with the data. They had clipboards. They could record the data on clipboards, but what a pain in the ass, and they always got the wrong data. You need to have good data if you're going to make right decisions. And the machines can cost millions of dollars. And so they want to make sure that they're making the right decision that's for like a long-term decision. And so, yeah, it's the totally separate. When we were talking about Azure Sphere with the segmentations, it's the same idea, except for PLC is one brain, and then our PCB is another that's just doing the monitoring. Any other questions? So here's what the factory looks like. There's 3,000 or so of these spindles. There's 24 of these machine types. So we're software developers. It's like our nature. We want to make 24 integrations, but that's expensive. Instead, we make one PCB board, and then their electrician in the plant, they can install it. And their electrician is way less expensive than the software engineers to write 24 integrations. And there's also other benefits. Now they can do the complete support themselves. If one of the boards doesn't work, we don't want them to call us. The boards are so dirt cheap, throw it away. Or first try rebooting it. If that doesn't work, then throw it away and start over again. And so it makes them more self-sustainable, and they can, we don't have all these integrations. Here's what the architecture of the app looks like. So you've got the proximity sensor that's fed into pins on the particle photon. And the beauty of the particle photon is their cloud has over-the-air updates built into it. And you can deploy code to groups of devices to do software updates. And this symbol here is Azure IoT Hub. This hub can scale to insane numbers if we need to. And this factory, I mean, there's 3,000 of them, so there's not like insane numbers. But if you had like millions, your same code that you write for a few hundred or a few thousand will all work on it. So IoT Hub is great for ingestion. This symbol here is Azure Functions. And you guys know what Lambda is in AWS? The same thing, serverless computing. It's dirt cheap. And we use that to parse the JSON to load into the data store. And in this case, the client was using SQL for everything else. And SQL can get expensive. We don't have to use SQL Server. But as long as you use less than 20 gigs of data, the price is good. And for them, 3,000 machines is going to take a long time to get that kind of data, like a decade or something. And by the time we post every minute the utilization on all the spindles, and it's just really small data. So for them, they're used to SQL, and it's good for this solution. But if you had a whole bunch of data, you'd go with like a NoSQL type approach. And finally, we wrote a mobile app. And the mobile app is really sweet. So the first thing you have to do when you provision one of these is enter the SSID and the password. The maintenance guy will get out his cell phone, will do that to configure the Photon. Then it goes to the mobile app, and the mobile app starts, it sends a message into Azure, and Azure's like, I don't know who you are, so let's blink orange. And let me show you the mobile app. So basically, there's a bunch of colors, and because you can have multiple electricians installing this at once, it's like, which one am I? I'm the one that's blinking, I picked a bad color, red. And then I'm on this machine, and I'm monitoring these spindles. That's my start spindle, and that's my ending spindle. So the machine repairman and electrician, they can configure this without needing us, and they can replace boards without needing us. And we just had to load the data initially for this is the layout of the factory of these machines, and this is the spindle counts on it. I think it's like super critical to make something that's got an easy user experience that they don't have to call you, because support sucks, and especially if it's easy support. We hate to be in that business. We talked a little bit about interoperability, but basically the challenge is there's 24 different types of machines, and we didn't want to integrate to all of them. I'm talking kind of fast. Does anyone have any questions? Ah, sweet. Okay.
This was not done using the Azure Sphere, right? What you described?
No, this was before Azure Sphere existed. So yeah, and actually, if I were doing this today, I would use the 3rd generation of particle, the mesh, because right now each of these micro MCUs has to connect to Wi-Fi, where it'd be easier and more supportable if they were all talking over mesh. And I'd still use Azure, of course, for all the data analytics. But yeah, because we have segmented, if you hack the device, you can't hurt anybody, you can't make bad quality. The less expensive silicon in this case would be good for this project. But Azure Sphere is going to be good for anything where your data is, like if someone gets to it, is going to be detrimental, or can cause bad quality or hurt somebody, or defense, and all those scenarios you're going to want to use Azure Sphere. It's worth the money for the security and the peace of mind. Just one lawsuit's all it takes. And for this, our client can make the decision. We can make a recommendation, but they'll ultimately decide security or price. And I think that with the denial of service attack that happened 2 years ago and things like that, security is way more important to people, and I think we're going to see a lot more people start choosing security over price in the future. Yeah, Mike.
So I've heard this presentation a couple of times now, and I've asked some similar questions, but just to set up, maybe you could describe for us the company probably had a choice with their PLCs of adding communications to the PLCs and updating their software to catch that data that is maybe messaged to some centralized server.
Yep.
They didn't choose that.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us why?
Yeah, because it's pretty damn expensive.
Okay.
And this solution was cheap and easy. The picture, I love it. I should have mentioned it. It's the gorilla. We're the barbarians at the gate, storming the gates with our cheap hardware and our cheap solution. Yeah, we could have put this really expensive new PLC on it. In some cases, we couldn't just update firmware and things like that in most cases. So a lot of manufacturing has really old machines. And also, these old machines, they didn't think about security enough when they built them. And so you can hack them pretty easily. And so now all of a sudden your PLC is hackable. You can make the bad quality. You can hurt somebody. So we have like really cheap solution that you can't hurt anybody. You can't make bad quality. And it's perfect. And our client actually wants to change this up a little bit and hide it to where it's in an enclosure, which I don't want. I like the barbarian look of it because it's like, yeah, we are wild and we're different. But they're thinking about making a product, and for a product they want it to look professional. And once you start enclosing it, now you got heat considerations, and so like being open like this it actually has a benefit. But yeah.
Maybe they'll let you put lights on the covers, like those little pixel playground cars and stuff.
Yeah, I love anything that blinks. It like mesmerizes me. Yeah. So for security also, we put in a separate network. So you hack this device, you can't like hit the rest of the enterprise. So all the IoT devices in the factory are on their own network, segmented from the rest of the enterprise. We mentioned the hardware segmentation is a really good strategy. And then kind of to Mike's point earlier, for brownfield, this is the best solution. If it's greenfield and you're buying new equipment, then hell yeah, I'd get OPC UA, get things that are already meant to connect and to talk to each other. But there's so much of manufacturing, so much legacy stuff out there that this IoT type solution is perfect for and really good. And then finally, Particle, the company I've been talking a lot in addition to Microsoft. I think their stuff is hosted in Azure too, but I'm not sure. But Particle, they wrote up a case study in our solution. And the case study, I've got some copies here if anyone wants it. It's really well written, which I'm grateful for because their editors can write way better than we can. But they found out of our solution, and they want to kind of highlight it because they're moving into the enterprise space. And you know, this talking to Azure, now we got value in the data, and we can do things with the data too that wasn't even intended. Like we wrote the work order system for this company, so we know when things on the machine fail, and we know utilization data now with how long they've been running, when they stop, that type of thing. We can use that data to make predictions, you know, using Azure machine learning, and give more value. Let's write a work order when we predict it's going to fail, schedule it for an off shift to fix it. Now we can do like tons of things to give more value that we hadn't even, the customer didn't even know the value of when they were asking for, hey, I just want to know my utilization, see a heat map of the factory. But I've got 10 of these if you guys want any of these articles on the solution, but it's pretty good one. So next, Indy is going to talk, and Indy is an IoT Solution Specialist. Is that your title? For Microsoft, and he's based out of Charlotte. Any questions for me while Indy comes in?
That's some more experience.
I expect between now and then we'll have
the opportunity to talk to you guys. I signed up several times to attend your sessions since I moved to Charlotte. I used to live here, moved away in Dallas, Texas, moved back. So again, once again, it's a great opportunity to get to know the local community and kind of get to know what type of industries, technologies, and then make connections. I've been with the company almost for 21 years now. Been fortunate to work on various different cutting-edge technology, particularly around Azure for the last 7 years or so. I lost my hair getting my ass kicked on AWS for a long time. But besides the fact, there are a lot of, my idea is to kind of give you what we are thinking as Microsoft in terms of Azure IoT. Some of that will give you tips on how to work around Microsoft technology and give you some pointers, because I know you're probably working across all sorts of IoT technology, whether it's Microsoft, Google, or AWS, or PTC, or anyone else that matter. So would that help if I just walk you through at a high level? Kind of, I can take some questions, but I've already been warned that we might not be able to get to all the questions today. So kind of, I'll explain some of the things as we see at Microsoft. So when we look at IoT, we kind of take a step back and say, hey, what are we trying to accomplish? Is this magical buzzword that everybody's chasing today? Or is this something that's been out there for a long time? We are trying to tap into it, right? So in simple terms, we got a whole bunch of things which we had for a long, long time, right? We had devices, we had PCs, we got data, but based on some areas, we tapped into some information. So we were doing BI for a long time, like business intelligence with the data you have as they were needed, but not really penetrated into some of the industrial automation, industrial type of things, and kind of understanding ways to make action through this data. So what is known as IoT. IoT for me at home versus IoT for someone at a corporate world, or Schneider, or Rockwell Automation, or Raytheon. It could be all different areas. So
that's kind of how Microsoft look at it at a very high level. Then see how can we scale, right? Where we talked about security and price. That's what I'm learning from most of the customers. That's where the conversation and the technology selection is happening. So I saw this on one of the IoT magazines they were talking about. So a lot of us, I think, in the industry doing this every day, it kind of think it's actually a technology revolution, but it's actually a lot of companies are looking at, hey, how can I make a buck, right? If I have a machine, and if we talked about refrigerators and some other mechanical things, how can I kind of be proactive and give you predictive information? Maybe I can sell you a subscription saying, hey, I can swing by your house and change your filter for, $9 a month or what have you. So we are hearing quite a bit of that from large enterprises. So so let me kind of explain here what my role at Microsoft. So if you look at the traditional Microsoft sales machine, we have a sales group that actually what we call sell to your organization for your organizational consumption. My group is basically about building IoT solutions with Microsoft partners for repeatable resale solutions. So a couple of my accounts, namely, well, I keep the names out of it. One is actually making dash cam cameras. The other one is actually monitoring body cams. Not because they want to make money in that case, but they're forced to do it by regulations. Then I have companies work with, they're doing deep water scanning, thermostats. So various different industries looking at it. So what we want to do, work with them, as long as they're building something on Microsoft technology, then we help them bringing the architects, and then hopefully we go to market together. So they make a buck, and hopefully we'll drive Azure consumption for them. So if one of you kind of fit that mold and be in the industry, please don't hesitate to send me an email. Maybe it's an area that we can help as well. So, and the other thing is kind of what we are trying to do is step away from all the geek stuff we like and see what is the business people trying to achieve, or what are we trying to sell to them. I had a customer today basically said, actually they're into waste management. So they wanted to go back to their grocery stores and say, hey, I can help you reduce your frozen food wastage by 20%. And they're trying to figure out, how do I monetize that by simply monitoring their garbage bin, right? So, crazy ideas, but somehow they come full circle. Any of you have seen this video? This is a great video because when you go through this video, you really don't think about IoT and so all the legacy technologies that we may have worked with, but it's all embedded here. And I'm sure the end customer is only looking at the solution, not everything in between. So let's run through this and we can kind of talk through it. Hopefully you can hear it.
Do we need our HohoLens to see this?
Probably a better experience. Can you hear it?
Speaker plugged in?
Yep. Great.
Is there a technical person in the house?
We have one. We lost that one, but I'm not going to mess with it because we fought through that number of times. So this video is basically talking about all the elevators that ThyssenKrupp manage. They're gathering predictive maintenance, and it goes through IoT Hub and basically send alerts to the technicians using Salesforce or CRM Dynamics or what have you. Then the end technician is actually using HohoLens to be able to pull up the entire diagram and manual through 3D and be able to do the repairs. So they're actually doing in a subscription model what they call elevator as a service, right? So you constantly pay a fee every month for the service.
Are they going to
Yeah, so for example, what they're trying to do here is, one is for training, right? So there are various models. Typically, you would have to have these built in their labs on every single model so they can train. Instead, they're using virtual elevators to train. Also, if a technician goes to a site, they can actually use the HohoLens and be able to pull up the manual and in 3D format. And they can also dial using like Skype or any type of teleconferencing they're using to be able to collaborate. The main part is actually predictive maintenance, right? Being able to detect some anomaly took place. So we'll skip through that. Take a look at that. It's all over YouTube as well. It's really a good video because it touches every technology, and IoT is not even mentioned there, but this full-scale IoT solution end-to-end. So this is huge. We are seeing huge momentum in terms of adaptation of Microsoft technology by large enterprises. So I don't know what type of companies you service and serve, mainly because of the commitment to the IoT platform. So this in terms of technology, people, resources. Yes, sir.
So I'm just wondering, your last slide implied that you have HohoLens doing augmented reality for an engineer going in and doing like building maintenance. And a while ago, when I heard a presentation, there was quite a bit of tethering of the HohoLens to a piece of equipment that you might have to like backpack or something like that. Has that evolved so now that it's almost like you could wear a headset and just walk around the building?
Yeah, so this actually one of the first pilots we did. Go ahead.
So I work with the HohoLens on a pretty much daily basis. It's never been a device that you've needed to tether. That's always been kind of the main selling point on it, is that it's able to use your spatial recognition and your spatial mapping to understand about the environment without actually having to have the PC. The PC is actually built into the headset.
It might have been one of your competitors that they were talking about, and I'm just conflating the two.
It could be, yeah. In fact, I think last week there was an announcement from military, right? They made a $450 million commitment for about 100,000 devices. I don't know exactly what use cases. I'm sure there are many combat scenarios they can play in-house, right? So the other factors are playing it out in the marketplace is purely based on data center capacity, data center availability across the globe. Many of our companies that large enterprises, they service globally. So number of regions, this actually, and then there are additional service providers, what we known as MSPs, attaching their services to Azure, and then thousands of enterprises are leveraging that. When we first started, as you know, we were way behind AWS services and solutions, so it has gone tenfold or hundredfold last 4 or 5 years in terms of the reach and capacity. So this basically leads into the other significant area of security. This is some of the certifications that we go by. You can go to Microsoft Trust Center and be able to see all the certifications that a particular industry would require for us to play in. Because if you don't have these, then simply you cannot play. So this has to do with simply when you talk to the customers, you have a lot of consumer devices, right? They are not necessarily centrally managed. Even if you have a Nest today, they should be able to talk to your compressor, your HVAC, and be able to say, hey, this is what's going on in your house. You need to change your filter, your compressor is acting erratically, all those things not connected. Mainly, in many cases, we are finding out HVAC manufacturers, whoever might be that manufacturer, is afraid to put their brand behind the cloud service until they fully trust and be able to transact behind the compliance they have to abide by. So the choice that they have taken is simply building the security scenario within their data center. Can they do it? Absolutely. Can they scale? Probably not to this scale. Even if they do scale now, financially, they can't ever make the numbers. So the difference here is because of the huge capacity, we can scale and continue to press that price. And in fact, mainly because of AWS and Google and Microsoft, this battle really benefiting the customer because it's constantly driving the price to the bottom. So if you have any specific industries you serve, I know I was in healthcare about 6 years ago. We couldn't get any of our customers get on board on Azure until have some of these healthcare certifications. So most of them are coming on board now.
So right now, data is just going one way to be stored. Will there be two-way control of it in the future as a hope?
In terms of?
Anything. So you were talking about your HVAC systems giving out information, and I can subscribe to a service to some dude comes out and changes out my filter. But what I'm thinking of is I'm having a power draw in one part of my house that's producing too much heat from a device, and maybe my HVAC system can communicate, is getting information from a certain source, and smart vents can reallocate because they know I'm working heavily in one part of my house because there's a device that has reported, hey, I'm turning on, I produce this many BTUs, send up this flag, and then I have HVAC saying, hey, let's cool it off.
We'll get to the edge scenario, right? That's so. Question is around what can we do locally right there, right now, without sending all this data up, right? So that's actually becoming the significant ask from the customer. So you see some of the industry recognition in terms of folks who really do all these studies. So it's kind of a validation. So you notice Microsoft, AWS, PTC, and all these brackets kind of going head to head in that area. Some areas got IBM. I don't know how.
I mean, what if you had a device that, because everybody's getting more and more worried about privacy every time we have breaches and hacks and things like that. So I'm thinking of like Samsung SmartThings still has to process in the cloud, but what if you guys had a device that stayed in the house, that the information didn't go out, but only when people changed things,
yep.
Still, internet's out, but my smart home still function even though the internet is out.
Absolutely. I always think we could have made the Xbox as the IoT hub on-prem. Like one of the missing opportunities if you really think about it, because even now, everybody's fighting for an aggregation point or aggregation software. If you have cameras and all kinds of things at home, you have 10 mobile apps and 10 apps. It's just not consolidated yet, right? And we are not really Microsoft-wise. We are not really playing in that space. So it's a land grab, right? If we had incorporated IoT Edge inside, Xbox, that would be a cool thing. I don't know what the Xbox team is thinking. It's like, we don't do IoT, right? Who knows?
They've got 2.4 antennas already built into it.
Yep, completely. So to your point, most of the companies are figuring out, hey, this is secure enough, or it's a matter of what cloud they want to choose. Now they're figuring out, how do I allocate this data and make sense? Do I do this processing and analytics, up there in the cloud, or do I need to do some of this stuff on-prem? So if you think about disconnected systems, oil rigs, submarines, right? We are working on a project with cruise lines, right? When they go, they have no connection unless you pay a lot of money for satellite connections, right? So intelligent edge becoming a more prominent conversation, and then being able to do that anomaly detection. Because if you're taking a machine line, 100 pictures for defects, why do I want to send all these images to the cloud to find out what type of defect we have? Why don't we do that at the edge? So we'll talk through some of that. process. So this is the curve that we are seeing. First, customers trying to like figuring out what data do I need to send, do I need to adapt the cloud. Most of them are saying, yeah, I can't scale, I can't get my data center to do all this work, provide the security with the dollars I have. Then it's about, how do I connect all these millions of devices I may have? So we worked on a project, on a thermostat project. They average about 1 million to 2 million thermostats. Right now they want to go out there and figure out a way to monetize this and centrally manage that so they know what's going on with the commercial HVAC systems as well as consumer systems. AI is the next phase. How do I figure out what kind of data, and intelligence I want to take out of that? And then the next piece is, hey, I've been doing this in the cloud. It's pretty cool. Guess what? My bill is pretty high too, because I'm sending everything up there. So now everybody's trying to focus on some sort of a gateway. We call it an IoT edge. Different manufacturers call it something different. But being able to locally process this data, only send the information you need. So this brings up the coolest thing about Azure Sphere. So give you some nuggets. The guy who really developed Azure Sphere is a guy by the name of Galen Hunt, a Microsoft researcher who's been in the company for a long time. He's the guy who was behind Xbox. So if you look at the Xbox history, we got hacked 3 times on the earlier version. Since the version 3, we have not been hacked. So they built these 7 properties into the Xbox, and they realized, hey, there are millions of microcontrollers out there, right? But guess who's doing these 7 properties? Nobody. So the end customer would buy a microcontroller, and you guys will set up a bunch of data centers, bunch of security systems, and try to secure these MCUs. At the end, it's pretty, costly. So what we are trying to do is, hey, don't worry about the security. Don't worry about the data. We will give you enablement to get to your data from point A to point B and focus on what you're trying to accomplish. Basically, the data that you're trying to get from any endpoint device. So Azure Sphere is designed, it's less than $10 for 10 years. So we are not necessarily making any money because we are doing 10 years worth of security updates for the operating system. And you are responsible for your end application. So if it's a thermostat, all you're worrying about is how cool and fancy my mobile interface would look like. Before, you were worrying about the whole thing. You couldn't ever make money because you couldn't scale, right? So that's the kind of the magic behind our MCU compared to the industry one. Yes?
So you mentioned Xbox, and the thought occurred to me, is there a shared root of trust, or are the products independent? Because the attack surface on Xbox is just huge. The hackers want to get in there and write their own game. So your TPM is always, I'm sure your 4th and 5th generations are being attacked, even if your 3rd generation was the last one that was hacked. Does Sphere share the same root of trust as the Xbox?
I do not know.
Okay.
But it's a completely different operating system because we moved to a lesser footprint using a Linux kernel. Right, so Xbox, if you look at, somebody said it runs better than Windows, right? We don't care. As long as you get to data. And it's funny because, as long as I've been in the company, to me, after 2011 or 12, it's a completely different company. How we think, how we operate, how we embrace, you name it, right? Because I remember when I joined supporting NT351 for Walmart, right? If you didn't drink the blue Kool-Aid, you're not even part of the cool crowd. So from there to what we see now, it's all about if you use any type of cloud service, you can bring anything you want to bring, right? So that's why even if the whole Azure Sphere operating system is open source, you can actually download and do the work to embed it with any other microcontroller that you like to have. So the other part we heard from customer is, hey, you guys got a whole bunch of stuff, it's a whole lot of confusing, where do I start? Particularly, a lot of customers are saying, I don't have an experienced IoT staff. We are trying to learn as we go. So what we're trying to do is kind of segment this. So if you're an organization, you don't have a whole lot of depth in technology. You just want to have a SaaS type solution, at least as the V1 release for your product. You can leverage Azure Central, what we call Azure IoT Central. Basically, you go in there and say, I want to pick a region in Azure, and you basically say how many devices you want to connect. We do all the scaling, updates, management. Think of this like the Office 365 versus installing Exchange on-prem and managing and updating it, putting firewalls and all that stuff, right? Then the second tier is basically Azure IoT Suite, right? So this suite includes all the components that you need to build an IoT solution. And then we provide some templates for you to kind of get there faster, and I'll talk about that. Now, the other part is edge. You talked about, Azure Sphere, or it could be a gateway. How do I connect all these devices, aggregate them, and decide which data I want to send to the cloud? So it's kind of an option for you there too. So another way to look at it, let me build this slide. Actually, the next, okay. So that's the first tier, basically SaaS. The second tier is a platform as a service, right? So built around the IoT suite. And what we have done is we have created what we call solution accelerators. So there are 4 today: remote monitoring, predictive maintenance, and connected factory. I call this like an 80-20 or 75-25. It'll get you about 75% of what you're trying to achieve. All the front end is built, all the services that you need to spin up in Azure, they automatically spin up. Then it's a matter of you going in there and connecting your devices and your services and configuring for your outcome. In fact, a lot of third-party service providers, the traditional SIs, are building their own templates. So if you're a company who used to build an IoT gateway, what they're doing is not only the gateways there, but they're also building all the hooks that needs to happen behind the scene in Azure, so that will get you started that much faster. Same thing, if you go to the marketplace, there are a plethora of device manufacturers who could help you finding that solution. And then finally, if you need an IoT partner, there are a bunch of them as well. I have a slide on that. So this is like the what I call absolute geek fest, right? So if you have all the expertise in-house, all the developers, you can just go in there and handpick out of like hundreds of IoT solutions which one you would need, right? So large companies, we've got 50, 60 people to do this. This is the model that they would use. Any questions here? Okay. So a couple of templates on.
Just had a question, like on the just going back a couple of slides, right? On the edge, right? You said that there is so the manufacturers of these devices, right? When you need a thermostat or cameras or anything, so the Microsoft engagement there is it kind of the Azure Sphere is what that underlying or underpinning operating system or the MCU?
No, Microsoft Azure Sphere, I would say it's not going to fit every MCU scenario, mainly because we can't do anything other than Wi-Fi today, right? So there are Rev 2 coming up, all sorts of LTE, all kind of connection things. So, but if you are in the greenfield scenario, you never had a solution, and you have most of the, like, we work with a company called Sub-Zero. All they do is commercial refrigeration and in fact, the whole kitchen. So many of those scenarios, they do have Wi-Fi, in fact, good Wi-Fi. So they have chosen to go that route. Whereas if you're Honeywell, if you're in a drilling scenario, right, you're not going to have a good connection. So it's one of the options. But if you go to like Advantech and many other hardware solutions, they have many different types of microcontrollers as well as gateway devices. HP is coming up with stuff. Dell is coming up with different components to connect there. And then the other thing that's happening is these hardware manufacturers, even Cisco, they're looking at, hey, we need to have capability at the edge in order to do processing. So there are a lot of hardware manufacturers also actually embedding Azure IoT Edge as part of their solution. So then basically you can leverage that, run it in a container or Docker or something. So that's becoming ongoing. So if you go to GitHub, you'll be able to see all the options you can download based on what type of device you have. And in fact, we are trying to include IoT Hub in the future in Azure Sphere, right? Windows 10 IoT would have IoT Edge running on-prem on the device itself, even on the IoT core, like a very small footprint. So it's taking place. Most of the people, it's actually a great point. They are struggling with finding right sensors, right price, because they're dealing with thousands, right? It has to meet the security, pricing, technical requirements, and things like that. It's fun to do a prototype. It's another thing to scale and manage and monetize it. So.
When you kind of manage these devices, the IoT Central, is there a common or it can be any device?
So IoT Central, this is kind of like the dashboards you would get, kind of an admin operator model. So behind the scene, you will be able to manage devices and insights and whatever the alerts and actions you want to take. And there's a builder side. So you
bare minimum criteria of what the device needs to meet for you to manage it, or
I'm sorry?
Is there a bare minimum criteria for the device to qualify to be managed by the IoT Central?
Good point. Anything that connect to IoT Hub. So there are many ways to connect that to the IoT Hub. Then we incorporate the IoT Hub device, management service, and provision, deprovision devices that way. Let's see what I skipped. These are kind of like the high level. These are changing almost every day. Key thing you need to remember if you're interested, IoT Central, right? That's like the SaaS solution version of Microsoft. Get started with an IoT project. The other thing I would really remember is the solution accelerators, right? Why kill yourself if somebody created a template? You can perhaps use that as your architectural starting point, even if you don't use the template. Here's an example, right? So, in fact, I have a customer or partner who's building a DDoS solution. It's really cool. Part of it sits in AWS, half of it sits in Azure, and he's kind of making all the customers happy. They don't care whether it's Azure customer or AWS customer as long as they get the security. So this is the bundled version. This is basically a suite of IoT solutions bundled for licensing purposes as well as in terms of ease of use as well. But you don't have to be restricted to that. You can just use any Microsoft technology behind that. So this is kind of like the IoT Edge as a whole page. So one of the things you can do, IoT, we have a page, IoT certified devices, right? When you go to that page, you'll find hundreds of devices, actually thousands probably now, basically designed to work with Azure platform, particularly with IoT Edge. They're basically taking their product, embedding it and making sure they followed all the steps so we provide support for it, right? So if you're in a part of a device company, that's another way to do that, because customers don't even talk to us. They just go to website and search and see, hey, do they support this particular device? Another thing that's becoming very popular, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with Azure Stack. Azure Stack is basically a big white box, right? Basically, I think HP, Dell, Avanade, or 6 or 7, Cisco, they support a full on-prem Azure. Not only look like, it functions completely like Azure. Whenever you're ready to connect to Azure, you can enable that. So this entire gateway functionality, to your point, being able to process and do all the AI and machine learning stuff locally, you can do that. The scenario I talked about, Carnival Cruise Line, that's what they're going with, Azure Stack when they're sailing, right? When they come back to the base, connect, sync whatever they need to sync. So it's a really cool pilot that's happening. So this is kind of like a marketing slide for Azure Sphere. It could be for anything, but it is not for everything, right? You know, typically with Microsoft, we are a platform provider. The creative folks are you guys trying to figure it out, where it works, how it works, and that's, you know, pretty much what we're trying to do. And then since we had this product, I mean, the laundry list of next updates they are looking for is like 2-3 pages long, particularly around connectivity. So that's a no-brainer. We knew right away very few folks would have Wi-Fi availability when you're leveraging a microcontroller. And then shameless plug for Windows 10, IoT, or IoT Enterprise. But as I said, it doesn't matter if you want to plug your wheelchair or lawnmower to Azure, we're good, right? And as long as it's on Azure. But we have seen quite a bit of uplift on Windows 10 IoT Core on various different projects, handheld stuff, you know, baggage scanners, even those mobile based options, but many of them are coming back to Windows 10 IoT. Another way to look at the whole Microsoft stack at a different level, what's available out there. I think there are quite a bit of stuff, you know, some cases it's very confusing, the rapid pace that we are releasing. Any questions? I don't know how much time we have. Or yes, sir.
You have the different offerings, like for insurance or worker insight. You have different offerings for IoT, like for agriculture industry.
So you talking about vertical solutions?
Yeah.
Yes. So we have industry solutions pages. So if you go in there, and mainly actually if you think about it, it's, again, all the Microsoft vertical solutions, we don't make end solutions for anything, right? Even if you look at traditional Windows or Office, so it's always developed by partners on Microsoft platform. So if it's healthcare, you know, you'll see a whole bunch. I can tell you, like Schneider Electric, you know, or Honeywell. Honeywell is, you know, building solutions for the entire plant management system, aerospace, building and safety solutions, smart buildings. They are the end product where they bring in the right sensors, right gateways. It just happens to be consuming Azure. But when you go to that industry solutions or vertical solutions page, you'll be able to see partner solutions. In fact, I don't know, I pulled any. Let's see. So let's do the solution. don't know why I jumped to the other page. So this is, for example, what you're talking about, right? So when you go in here, what you find out, this is the same, traditional offerings from Microsoft. Most of these solutions are built by one of the Microsoft partners who have been in the healthcare industry for a long time. So they know what they're speaking and talking and all the compliance requirements associated with it. And you can look by category, there are a bunch on all of them. Any other questions? Yeah.
So what's most confusing for me about when Microsoft talks about IoT Edge is that the implication is I can run some Microsoft software on my hardware entirely and reduce my cost because I'm not running cloud services. Obviously, the interface to the cloud is still there to manage your edge.
Correct.
But what you'd like as a small business or even a larger business doing IoT is to be able to control your own costs and decide whether I've run in the cloud or not. And also how much business logic I run in the edge and can it fit. And what's not talked about is how much AI and machine learning and vision systems and what have you can run on the Microsoft Edge versus, and I assume the Edge is what I said, it's on my hardware, not on Microsoft's hardware.
Yeah. We will never, like I said, that's a great point, right? So I shouldn't use the word never, first of all, because we have a microcontroller now, right? So I don't know what other hardware is being cooked up behind the scene, right?
Data box edge.
Yep. So, but the thing is, if you look at even the MCU, being able to put all the cloud updates for 10-year span, and it's less than, if you buy bulk, it could be $4, right? They're basically saying, hey, what we are after is your cloud consumption. To your point, today, all the modeling happens still in the cloud, right? Then we push the model down to the edge. So there is that cloud interaction to create the first model and then push it back down. And then from there, you determine, okay, 90% of this stuff, I never have to sync. And then that's one side. The other side is, right now, there's so much changing in terms of the update. If you look at the IoT Edge, half of what we promised in terms of machine learning, cognitive services, those updates just happened last month, right? So I think it'll get to a point, then it'll become a hardware choice and the price choices and things like that. IoT Central, for example, if it's 5 devices, I think it's free. So it's kind of giving you an opportunity to kind of play around. But to me, it has had to be like, to your point, 100 or somewhere. But these are all kind of figuring out. He's the guy to, I'm one of them, but he's one of the guys to kind of give, feedback back to the product team. If it's not working, they will have to change. One of the things, Azure Sphere, our role is to kind of evangelize and take the feedback in terms of how it gets distributed is through the chip manufacturers and partners, right? Because for us, it's just, have it out there. Hopefully they will connect to Azure. And to your point, Azure Sphere can connect to AWS just fine. It's a hope that you'll come to us. All right, so any other questions?
The Edge currently runs only on Azure Stack, or it runs on any other, the Edge software can run only on Azure Stack, or it can run on any.
So Azure Stack, most of the Edge updates are coming. So it will run, right? Even on Azure Sphere, it doesn't work right now. Windows 10 IoT is coming. So right now, like I said before, biggest product team challenges getting as many as edge features into everything, right? That's when customers are seeing, hey, I can use this edge to do most of the work rather than sending everything up. So edge scenario is a key part of this vision. It's not fully complete. I mean, you had to be like reading blogs every week just to keep up with the edge. It's that many updates happening all the time.
Is there any specific difference in strategy when you compare to something like AWS Greengrass versus the IoT Edge, which you guys are using?
I mean, there are subtle, but at the end of the day, our play is the hybrid play.
There's one key difference. IoT Edge is open source. Greengrass is not.
No.
Greengrass is Lambda program, download a containerized workload. IoT Edge, exact same thing, but it's full open source.
And the other thing, if you look at like, they are more, I mean, obviously they have a huge enterprise, but they also focus on a lot of consumer stuff. For us, mainly we are winning the companies that we make actual money. Even if they decide to go fully cloud, it'll take them 5-10 years. So it's our kind of a bread and butter right now where we are winning the customers. Almost all of them are hybrid. Like, most of the stuff is, on-prem, and they will select the components that they need to send to the cloud for various reasons: compliance, security, you feel better, all kinds of stuff. So, and then the mid-market, right? If you look at the mid-market, they're kind of born in the cloud type of organizations, right? They don't have the resources, capacity, bandwidth, you name it. So they kind of spin up everything from Office 365 to hopefully the operating system to everything else. So it depends on, so I spend most of the time in enterprise customers. That's what we're targeted to do. So that's kind of what I'm learning from them and hearing from them, and we kind of take it to the Redmond. I hope this is kind of helpful in terms of at a high level. And each of these topics, whether it's machine learning or they are its own 1-hour sessions in terms of the technical deep dives, which we can do that as well, right? This is like, Oh, one thing I do want to mention. This is where I learn most of my stuff too. Right here. If you go to Azure, any product or service you choose, you'll see a tab called IoT School. These are all the built webcasts, Olivier's webcasts, all the stuff, component by component. You can sleep on this for hours and hours and hours of data. But it's all publicly available now, which typically was kind of all over the place, YouTube and Build's website. Now they're all consolidated into one place. So as topics come up, you can just hit it up. Some videos are only 8 minutes, some of them are 1.5 hours. So go figure. Is this helpful? So I know if I were to come next time, I know you guys are much more deeply technical, but probably on every IoT solution by every IoT manufacturer, right? Or solution provider, because you use different stuff. My Kool-Aid is only Microsoft. So, anything?
Thank you.
I'm done. Welcome.
And I also want to do a shameless plug for Pratt Miller, because now we're around 70 or so software engineers, but we have more than 100 engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. We can make all the devices. We can connect all the sensors. We're extra creative. We love hard problems. We're into security, so Pratt Miller, think of us for IoT, and we'll rock it out. Social media winners. Do you have
8 names?
8 names?
Before you do,
Let me go ahead and stop the meeting. I want to thank the guys in Lake Norman for sticking with us, and thank you guys for coming tonight. Awesome, Indy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good time.
What is the Internet of Things? Is it hardware, software, or both? Well, chances are you already have it in your pocket. It might be on your wrist. Recently popular are fitness bands with accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor our activities and heart rate. Now we have smartwatches which do all of that, play music, and they can answer messages. Smartphones and tablets have replaced maps, secretaries, alarm clocks, entertainment, and now they can control our homes, change the TV, the temperature, security, and lights all from your device. Our cars are even getting smarter with sensors to keep us safe. The Internet of Things is simply using technology to mimic the human experience and simplify life.